Good morning. Hi, guys. Welcome to life-threatening. Nope. No, not at all, in fact. Life hacking with Abby Levine. This morning, we're going to be talking about how to get your kids to do what you want without yelling, without bribing, without threatening, and without hurting them physically. I'd like to begin by telling you a story. A few years back, I had a friend over with some of her kids, and the kids were playing, and I needed my daughter Serafina to do something. So I asked her, and she did it. And my friend was absolutely bewildered. How did you get that to happen? Like, how did you do that? And then I realized that discipline is something that is challenging, and unless you actively seek out how to discipline your kids, we don't know. We just kind of try to figure it out. And I developed a system from there that I could teach other people. This was before I became a hypnotherapist. Other people, my friends, and other people I came into contact with about how to discipline your kids in a way that doesn't sacrifice your own integrity, your own authenticity, and also still keeps the peace in your home. So there's a few things that we want to keep in mind. And by the way, I do have some tea. Hi, Chris. Hi, Ashley. Good to see you guys. Because this is Monday morning tea with me, I do have some tea, which I'll be drinking. So one of the most important things to keep in mind is that kids are like dogs. Now, this might offend some people, although those of you who are dog people will know this to be absolutely true. Not in their level of intelligence, obviously, but in their need for an alpha, right? With dogs, if dogs don't have an alpha, they will assume the alpha position. They will do it unwillingly because dogs don't actually want to be an alpha. They want to have an alpha, but they will do it if there is no alpha. So you, as the parent, are the alpha in your home. If you don't assume the alpha position, if you don't accept your leadership role in your home, your child or children will become the alpha. Now, usually out of the kids, there'll always be one, right? That is the one that sets the tone, decides how things are done. That is your alpha. Hopefully that's you, but maybe it's not. And if it's not, that's okay. I wasn't born knowing this stuff. I knew it because I intentionally sought it out because of the position that I had in my job. And I knew that, hey, Brisa, I knew that I had to, right? So that's why I'm here teaching it to you guys, so that we can all benefit from the information and we can live in peace. The best. So because you're the alpha of your home, it is your job to set up the safe boundaries, okay? Children need to have boundaries. It is the only thing that allows them to feel safe, is to know where their boundaries are. And they feel safe with consistent boundaries, okay? If they don't have boundaries or they don't know where their boundaries are, they will push you and push you and push you until you show them where their boundaries are. And that might look like not listening, yelling, throwing tantrums, calling you names, right? It might look like a bunch of different things. What they're asking for, without them even knowing, they don't know. They don't know. What they're asking for is, show me where the edge of my safety is. Show me where, hi Kaya, show me where my boundaries are. Okay? So that's what kids are asking for when they start to act up. It's okay, show me where my boundaries are, where am I safe? They will try all kinds of different behavior until, much love to you, until they see where their boundaries are. So it'll actually only get worse if you don't give them boundaries, not better. They will turn into truants, right? Delinquents. Or they'll just turn into entitled brats that will live with you until they're 35 years old and have you pay all of their bills for them. So you don't want either of those scenarios to come to place. Therefore, it is in your best interest and the best interest of your child to set safe and healthy boundaries. Let's talk a minute about tough love. Because I remember listening to Dave Ramsey one morning, and he was talking about tough love, and well, he was talking about love and boundaries, and one of the parents that was calling in that was having an issue with their adult child was saying, almost as if a thought to themselves, well, I guess I better start using some tough love. And Dave Ramsey just blew up at them, and he's like, tough love? Tough love to show your child where boundaries are? No, that is just love. And he used this great analogy, which I'll never forget, which is if your 2-year-old or 3-year-old, your toddler, right, wanted to play in the street and ran out into the street because they wanted to play in the street. And then when you went to go protect them, right, and go grab them and get them out of the street, and they threw a tantrum because they wanted to play in the street, and you're actually removing them from the place where they want to play, that's not tough love. That's just love. That's just protection. That's just keeping your child alive, right? So setting boundaries is exactly the same thing. You're not doing it because of tough love. You're doing it because of love, because it's your job, yours and only yours, right, to make sure that your child becomes the most well-functioning adult, becomes the most well-adjusted adult as is possibly, possible. So it's your job. Now, you can't make them do anything. You can't cause them to do anything. You can't control any of their behaviors. As much as we want to believe that we can control our kids, it's not true. That is an illusion because they're their own people. And because they're their own people, we can't control them. We can lead them, we can guide them, we can influence them through the use of consequences and reward systems and things like that. But there's nothing we can do to control them. They're their own individual people. It's also a really important thing for you to wrap your head around, right? Because parents who think they can control their children have a really hard time coming to terms with when their kids do something that is out of their, out of their sphere, out of their scope of actions. And they're confronted with a really harsh reality. Like, why would my child do that? I would never do that. Well, it doesn't matter if you would never do it or not. Your child is an individual, free-thinking person of their own right. But as their parents, it's our job to mold them and guide them within our best ability because we're their first influencers, right? Okay, so something else to keep in mind is very, very clear, is that talk is cheap, right? You can't tell a child, oh, you're totally safe, and then leave the doors open at night or leave the windows open or, be gone for several hours when your child doesn't have a way of contacting you or not have safe boundaries or give them anything that they want. That's not safe. Right? Number one, you're setting them up for terrible disappointment in the future if you give your child everything that they want, because that's just not the way that life works, but you're teaching them that that is the way that life works. It's not great. And they will blame you for lack of boundaries, by the way. It seems really unfair and counterintuitive, but if you don't set and stick to really strong boundaries, your kids will end up resenting you for that. Not like hating you, but they will blame you. They will hold you responsible for not giving them very clear and safe boundaries. One last thing. Hi, Kara. Hi, Malka. Hi, Mercedes. One last thing that's really, really important to know before we go into the actual system of how to set up the boundaries and how to keep them in place is that you should never, ever, ever discipline a child for having an emotion, okay? Emotions are not only natural, but they're something that we can't help, right? If you don't want your child to be emotional, then go get a robot as a child, right? They're going to have emotions the same as you have emotions. And some parents even say to me things like, well, I'm a parent. I'm allowed to express my anger. Well, yes, you are, but you're not allowed to discipline your child for expressing their anger if you are fully entitled to express your anger all the time, right? So what we do in order to teach kids how to express their emotions in a safe way, I don't even want to say acceptable, because all emotions are acceptable. And the reason that they're acceptable is because they just are. But how to discipline, how to allow your kids to express their emotions in a safe way is just to teach them the 3 rules of emotional expression. The 3 rules for expressing emotion. Number 1, the first rule is it must not hurt. It must not physically hurt themselves. Okay? Ah, hi Sharon. Love you. It must not physically hurt themselves. Okay? So a child who throws a tantrum and starts bashing their head against the floor, not okay. Absolutely not okay. For them, that's what we teach them, right? Or bashing their heads against the wall or hitting themselves. Not okay. It physically hurts them, okay? Cannot physically hurt them. It also cannot physically or emotionally hurt someone else, okay? It cannot hurt another person. So if they're punching, kicking, throwing things, or if they're calling names or things like that, also unacceptable, right? If they're saying mean things, also not acceptable. So there are 3 rules for positive emotional expression. Cannot hurt themselves, cannot hurt others, physically or emotionally. And the 3rd one is cannot hurt property. Okay, so slamming of the doors, not necessarily, because what if there's a shelf on the wall or pictures on the wall and they fall off and break? No throwing of property, especially not expensive property like phones, video game consoles, TVs, things like that. No throwing of any property, no throwing of toys, because what if the toy breaks, right? It's broken rule number 3. What if the toy hits something like the TV and breaks the TV? It's broken rule number 3. Okay, so the 3 rules for emotional expression, positive emotional expression, are so it can't hurt themselves, can't hurt others, and cannot hurt property. What they can do is they can scream into a pillow. They can punch a pillow towards the wall, right? It's not going to hurt themselves. It's not going to hurt the pillow. They probably won't punch hard enough to puncture the pillow or anything like that, so it's really totally safe. The reason you want to do it towards the wall is because you might hit something, knock it off something if you punch it towards the door, or somewhere where there's stuff, which I learned by experience, by the way. So just punch it towards the wall. Over the bed is the best place because there tends not to be any shelves over the bed. That's super safe emotional expression. And they're allowed to cry, right? If they're going to scream, they do want to do it into the pillow, because what might you do? You might worry the neighbors. So that's emotionally hurting somebody else, right? So if you're going to scream at the top of your lungs, you're totally allowed to, but just do it into the pillow, okay? If you want to cry, absolutely, you're totally allowed to cry. Stay in your room, you cry. When you're feeling better, you can come out. Does that make sense? So got the 3 rules of safe and healthy emotional expression. This goes for you too, guys, by the way. We all need to hold ourselves to the same level of expectation, right? So these are all safe ways to emotionally express yourself. We also have the benefit of journaling, and older kids who are feeling emotional can journal, they can write letters, they can send text messages, etc., etc. So there we go. We've got the rules of emotional expression. Never, ever, 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 hey Karen, hey Kristen, never discipline for emotion. Every child is allowed to have an emotion, the same as every adult is fully entitled to have emotion. It just has to follow the 3 rules. Okay, so let's get into the system. It's super simple, but I just want to go through all the steps to make sure that we've covered a lot of the basics. And then you guys can ask me questions and things for clarification later on. So the first step is to establish the list of house rules. Now, you might have done this before, which is great. If you've never sat down and established a list of house rules, then you want to do that together as a family. If your children are under the age of 2, then you don't necessarily need to write it down. You just need to know in your own mind, and it might help you to put it in your phone or something, what the rules are, right? We'll go over some of those in a minute. So you get together and you establish a list of basic ground rules for the house, okay? Then together as a family, you create a little poster board and you write the rules on the poster. It's fine if it's just, you know, a regular sheet size of paper. But if you want to, go to Office Depot, get like that 25-cent, you know, poster board and decorate it and create the rules. The reason that you want to do it with the kids and not impose it upon the kids is because we're trying to get their agreement. We want to get their involvement in the creation of the rules. We can do things when we're creating the rules like role play. That's especially helpful for kids over the age of 8 or 9 when it comes to tone, right? And how to talk to someone with respect and setting like respectful boundaries, things like that. So you write the rules on the sheet, okay? That doesn't mean it's a finite list of rules. That means that every time you come up with something, you put it on the list. Now, make sure that the rules on the list, on the house rules, every single one of them needs to be something that you stand by 100%, okay? So don't write things on the sheet that you would not be willing to reinforce with consequences. Hey, Sean. For example, right, one of the rules in our house is listen first time, okay? If you're not willing to reinforce that rule by enacting consequences, then don't even put it on the list. But for some people, for most people, it's really, really important to train their kids to listen first time so they're not, hey, 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 can you do this? Can you do this? Can you do this? Right? The first time that you ask them, they actually get up and do it. It's a miracle. It really feels good, let me tell you. Another one that's really important would be, you know, the 3 rules of emotional expression you might want to put on the list. Don't hurt others. Don't hurt yourself. Don't hurt property, right? They're very simple, very straightforward. You want to make sure that your child understands what each of those means, right? You want to do this for all the rules. What does that mean? When I say don't hurt yourself, what does that mean? And ask, and, you know, have them answer you. We want to test for absolute understanding with each of the rules. It's going to be harder with the littler kids, but it's still a step that you want to follow, right? Especially with after about the age of 18 months to 2 years, you want to keep it a little keep a little smaller. Keep your list of rules a little smaller for under 3. But it can, as you see that they're starting to understand things more, then you can build on your list. Add things that are super important. For example, once Serafina hit about the age of 9, we had to add tone. Keep your tone respectful, right? Because she's starting to hit puberty and she actually has no concept of the way that she is saying things. I got a really great suggestion from one of my clients the other day, which is suggest that people record their preteens and teens while they're talking, because a lot of them actually have no idea how they sound when they're talking to you in a disrespectful manner, and then you can play it back to them. We keep it super simple. We role play. Okay, so for example, I would say something like, okay, let's say a sentence. What sentence would you like to say? And then Saravina comes up with a sentence. Put the dishes in the sink. Okay, great. So how do you think you would say it if you were being disrespectful? She goes, put the dishes in the sink, or put the dishes in the sink, or something, right? I sure will, don't you worry. I'm getting there. And then, okay, well, how would you say, put the dishes in the sink in a respectful way? Please put the dishes in the sink. It's so great to teach manners. I'm huge on manners, so I've been teaching Serafina please and thank you since she could talk. But if it's something that you haven't reinforced, it's not too late. You can definitely start adding it in. You know, maybe you want to even put it on your list of rules until it becomes a behavior. Things like that. So that is how you would go about setting up the list of rules which you want to post in a public place, right? So that it's there for constant reinforcement, and so that it's there that every time a rule is broken, you can point to where the rule is on the sheet. Now, do you see why it's so important to put things on the sheet that you would be willing to reinforce, right? And to add things that are super duper important to your household to the sheet, so that the kids have very clear, concise boundaries and they know exactly what's expected of them. That's super duper so important. I couldn't even explain how important it is that kids know what's expected of them, because when they think they know what's expected of them and they get punished for doing something outside of that, it's really, really hurtful to them, because they're trying to be good, right? They're trying to fit in with your expectations and they're still not making it the cut, right? On the other hand, vice versa is equally important. Okay, so let's talk about consequences. This is the super fun part, and obviously I'm being sarcastic. This is the most challenging part of the whole system. Setting the rules up is super fun, but engaging in the consequences is where the test comes in, not only for your child, but actually especially for you. It's hardest for adults to reinforce the rules and the boundaries, because the kids will eventually do what we say because they have to if they're living under our roofs, right? So the consequences, I'm going to break it up into ages, into different age groups. So let's do 0 to 12, 13 first. So actually not 0, it's about 1. About 1 year old to 13, your consequences are going to be pretty linear and pretty much the same for most of the age groups. The first thing to make sure is that everybody gets one warning, okay? They get a warning before the consequence comes in, so you can appear just, and it doesn't create this conflict. There is never a need for conflict. Why? Because you are the alpha. You are the one in charge. The moment you question your ability to be the alpha is the moment they think they have to become the alpha. But as long as you know to the depths of your soul that you are the alpha, there is no question about who's in control. It's you, because you're the parent. Got it? So from about the ages of 1 to 13, something that's super duper effective is timeout. And I have parents all the time going, oh, we've tried timeout, it doesn't work. Well, it doesn't work because you probably haven't done it in exactly the the most effective way, and that's totally fine, nobody's fault. But let me go over the way to use timeout that it is the most effective. First of all, it's creating one designated timeout spot. If possible, not in the bedroom. We don't want to create a negative association with being in their room. We actually want their room to be a safe, secure place where they play, they sleep, right? So it's actually more effective if timeout is not in the bedroom. So a spot on the stairs, a spot next to, a spot in the hallway, a spot outside the bathroom, not in the bathroom. Don't put them into a room where they can be enclosed, because then it's going to feel a little bit like abuse. It's really not, but it's just going to feel that way. They're going to feel closed in, and they're going to feel unsafe, actually. We want it to be in a spot where you can see them, you can keep an eye on them, because in timeout, while they're in timeout, they're not allowed to get up. They're not allowed to play with anything. They're not allowed to read, and they're not allowed to engage with anyone. So what that means is, as they're talking to you, as they are trying to get your attention, you are a blank sheet. You're not engaging with them. You're not saying, hey, psh, be quiet, stop talking to me, because that is engaging with them. That's what they want. You are completely blank. The moment that they get up, and initially they will, I can virtually guarantee that they're going to get up the first time you put them in timeout. The clock restarts, okay? It's important that you have a timer that is outside of you, that you can put in somewhere in the area that they're not going to have access to, right? So if you have a shelf near there, setting a timer on your phone and putting your phone out of arm's reach is great. If you have like an egg timer, using the egg timer, but a timer that is outside of you so that you are not the bad guy, the timer is the bad guy, right? So we're just putting the responsibility, putting the emphasis on the timer, okay. How long, how many minutes? You have them in timeout for the same amount of minutes as they are old. For example, when they're 1, they're in timeout for just 1 minute. When they're 5, they're in timeout for 5 minutes. And 5 minutes to a 5-year-old in timeout who's not allowed to play with anything or get up feels like a century. And so it really, really does the trick. We started timeout with Serafina when she was 1 year old. That was when I started to notice that she could tell the difference between right and wrong. She had just a look on her face when she was about to do something that she wasn't supposed to do, that we'd already, taught her that she wasn't supposed to do, like maybe climb the shelves or play with the TV or something like that. The first time, we had a little timeout chair as well. So we only used that chair for timeout. That was it. That was its designation. She didn't sit on it for meals. She didn't sit on it for playing. That was the timeout chair. So the first time I put her in timeout, I spent 45 minutes trying to get her to stay in timeout for just 1 minute. There was a lot of screaming and a lot of tantrums, and that's okay. I was able to see and to realize that the payoff would be far greater than the short-term pain of wading through those tantrums, okay? So every time she got up, I said to her, nope, you have to stay sitting until the timer goes off, right? And she didn't necessarily understand totally, but I kept putting her down, kept sitting her down. It took me 45 minutes to get her to realize that it was only when the timer went off that she was allowed to stand up. It was a painful day. I definitely had a glass of wine at the end of that day, I can tell you that. But the next day, when she did something, broke a rule, and she went back in timeout, it only took me 15 minutes, which still, yes, was a long time, but there were less tears, there were less tantrums, and it was only 15 minutes rather than 45 minutes. That was the last time I had to go through that exercise with her. So it just took 2 days, and every single day after that, when I put her on the timeout chair, she understood that she couldn't move until the timer went off, okay? And that's the same, no matter whether they're 1 year old, 9 years old, 12 years old, okay? They go in timeout, they can't talk to anybody, they can't play with anything, and they can't do anything to pass the time. They just have to sit there. What if, at the end of their time, they're still having a tantrum? Sometimes that's going to happen. That's okay. You walk over and you say, I believe that you're capable of calming down. I believe that you're capable, and you're fully allowed to feel, right? You're fully allowed to have your emotions. I understand that you're frustrated. I understand that you're frustrated, but you're not going to come out of timeout until that frustration has gone, until you've come back to a place of calm, until you've calmed down, right? So set a timer again. One more timer. When this timer goes off, if you're calm, you can come out of timeout. So that's how to deal with children who are still having a tantrum after the timer has gone off. We don't want to reinforce tantrums by allowing them to come out while they're having a tantrum. What is that telling them? All I need to do is yell really, 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 really loudly for a long time, and mom's going to give up or dad's going to give up. No. Do not reinforce that. They have to be calm. We're also teaching them how to self-soothe, but we're not focusing on that, but that's exactly what's happening. We're teaching them how to soothe themselves. A very important lesson. Okay, after the timer goes out, oh, also, as you're putting them in timeout, as they're going to timeout, the only exception to this rule will be toddlers under the age of 2. You're going to have to physically pick them up and put them in timeout because they're not going to know to go over to timeout by themselves. But after the age of 2, you are not allowed to pick them up and put them in timeout. They have to walk themselves, Okay, so they have to walk themselves to timeout and put themselves there. You can stand there over them going, go, now, go. And you don't move until they actually listen to you. Sometimes I've had parents who went through this. I've never been through this, but I have parents who, whose kids will say, no, you can't make me. Right? Ooh, gotta love that willpower. It's so strong. It'll get them far in life as long as you guide them. Right? So you can say, if they say, you can't make me, that's true. But when you get to timeout, you have a choice. This is where we bring in choices. You have a choice. You can go now and have 5 minutes, or you can go when you feel like it and have 10 minutes. And then they're like, well, what do you mean? I don't like either choice. Those are your only choices. You can go now and have 5 minutes, or you can go in a little while and have 10 minutes. Give them maybe 30 seconds to make up their mind. After 30 seconds, okay, now it's 10 minutes. But, okay, I'll go. Okay, great. You still have 10 minutes, so they'll go. If they don't, okay, you can go now, or it's 15 minutes, right? And you play that game until they get into the spot. Now, give them time to process that and move there. That's why I say give them 30 to 60 seconds. Give them some time to make that decision. Don't go now. Okay, now it's 10 minutes. Okay, now it's 15 minutes. Okay, now it's 30 minutes. No, give them some time and raise it incrementally by their age. Okay, so if they're 1, then it becomes 2, then it becomes 3, then it becomes 4. If they are 5, then it becomes 10, then it becomes 15, then it becomes 20. Okay, give them some time to process that, right? They're still human beings. We want to demonstrate treating them with respect. And it's the most important thing of this whole process is that you remain completely emotionless throughout this entire exchange. No emotion, no anger, no sadness, no pleading, no happiness, just you are a complete mask of emotionless nothing, okay? So that they have no idea what you're feeling. That might scare them a little bit to not see any emotion on your face, especially if you are pretty emotional. So no emotion, no physical hands-onness unless they're 1 or 2 years old. So very emotionless, going in timeout. This is just it. This is just the way that things go. You break a rule, it's time for timeout. In fact, the more calm you are, the more they're likely to listen to you. So sorry. That's just the way it goes. Remember we had that talk, right? We had that talk. And this is something else to explain is while you're doing the rules, while you're sitting down doing the rules, you explain the consequences and you explain the reward system so that everybody's on the same page before it even begins. They probably won't believe you until you actually do it a few times, and then they'll get the picture. Then they'll start to get on board. So 0 to 12, 13, timeout is great. Occasionally, you'll find a child who doesn't care if they're just sitting because they can take themselves on wonderful imaginative journeys. And then you do find something else, right? You find the thing that they love and you remove that for that amount of time or for a period of time. From about 13 to 18, the consequences are getting more real. You can expect more of an emotional reaction once hormones come into play. Okay, so from about the ages of 13 to 18, the consequences are going to be more practical. So they break a rule. Now it's still the same rules. It's still, everything is the same, no matter how old your child is. If they're still living with you and haven't left the home, the rules are the same. Everybody has the rules. Everybody in the household has to follow the rules, by the way, including parents. So that's another thing that you want to be careful about when you're creating your rules. Make sure it's something that you can stick to, because everybody must be held to the same standard. Hypocrisy will not be tolerated by children, and you might have realized that by now, but it will not be tolerated. All of the rules must be something that you would do as well. Okay, so 13 to 18, the consequences would be things like removing cell phone plan or cutting it off completely. It would be, disallowing from going to an activity, or just basically grounding them, right? So removing the thing that they like to do the most, because it has to be painful. Consequences have to actually make an indentation in their brain as something that they will not want to do again because the consequences sucked. My beautiful mother-in-law did such an amazing job at this. Her consequence was chores from a very young age, and so my husband didn't break any of the rules, and if he did, he knew he would have to do hours and hours of chores, right? So you can do something similar as well, but removing phone, removing video game, removing TV, favorite clothes, car privileges, things like that. The more extreme the behavior, the more firm the consequences have to be, must be. But they still must be there. Children need those boundaries in order to feel safe. And again, they will blame you if you don't put those boundaries there. So let's avoid that whole mess by making sure that the boundaries are there right in the beginning. From 18 to the time that they leave the house, the consequences are going to be a little different, okay? So it's going to be, if you're paying for their cell phone plan, then it's going to be cutting off their cell phone or turning off their cell phone. If you're paying for insurance, well, you don't want to turn off their insurance, but you definitely want to try to hold them responsible to paying their car insurance. Charging rent. Maybe you have a deal that if they follow the rules, then they don't have to pay rent, but they have to follow the rules. There has to be some kind of consequence. So if they don't follow the rules, then either they leave and have to find a room to rent, or they pay you more in rent. You could put a financial toll next to each of the rules after the age of 18, that they have to pay you this money once they break a rule. If that doesn't hurt, then find the thing that hurts them. Taking the car away. The one that always works, right, is having them move out. Yeah, it's hard. We love our children. But if we continue to enable them, we will create entitled brats, right? So we have to use love. Not tough love, just love, in order to allow them to become the adults that they were always meant to, that they were always designed to become. If you have some more questions with 13 to 18, if you have some specific questions, feel free to comment, and we can have a discussion about something that you'd like to try. When it comes to disrespectful tone or language used after the age, well, at any age, consequences are, need to happen. Hitting your mom or dad, calling them names, throwing stuff at them is unacceptable at any age, but especially important to nip in the bud after the age of 12 or 13, because that behavior is going to carry them through all the way into adulthood, and you will be responsible for that. You will be absolutely responsible if you don't do something about it now. Other things, so if your child speaks disrespectfully to you and you're on the phone, then you give them one warning. The way you're speaking to me is disrespectful. I will hang up, and then you hang up. And then you don't answer the phone, right? They call. No, you're unavailable. You become available to them when they would like to speak to you in a respectful tone. And that is you drawing your boundary, right, for them. Because if you allow that, you're teaching them that whoever they're close to, they can speak to like that. Is that a lesson that you really want to teach them? No, absolutely not. If they are with you and they're speaking to you disrespectfully, okay, here's your warning. You're speaking to me disrespectfully. That is unacceptable. This is what will happen if you continue. So this is what will happen. I will leave the house. We will not go on that vacation, or you will not go on that vacation. You will stay with grandma, you will stay with an aunt, or you will stay home by yourself if they're over the age of, 16, 17. You will not go to that party. You will not go to the movies. You will not get this thing that we were going to give you. You will not get your car. You will give me your car keys. Whatever it is, there has to be a consequence, right? Face to face. And you do not, absolutely under no circumstances do you allow that behavior to continue. Okay, so you nip it in the bud. No. Here's your warning. You were speaking to me in a disrespectful tone. This is what's going to happen if you continue. Give them 30 seconds to process that. You don't say a word. No arguing. No getting into a power struggle. If you allow yourself to become engaged in a fight, you are giving them permission to become the alpha. It is only a fight if you choose to get involved. If you don't choose to get involved, they're just speaking to you disrespectfully. You see the difference, right? You're just standing there. The way you're speaking to me is unacceptable. This is the consequence of what's going to happen. Okay, no problem, Katie. So there's the consequences, all right? Now with younger kids, a reward system is especially effective because there's a lot of things that they would like to earn. So you can set up a reward system for, you know, if you stay out of... Good. Beautiful, Karen. That's exactly right. And that's why your kids always love you. So with the reward system, if you stay out of the consequences, so timeout or, you know, having your cell phone taken away or having your video games removed, if you stay out of the consequences for X amount of days, you will get Y. Usually the best reward is going to be some kind of time spent with a parent, right? We want to increase the quality time that we spend with our kids anyway. So quality time spent with a parent doing an effective, you know, activity that they would actually want to earn. Going to Mount Asia, going to Disneyland after, you know, 6 months of no time out or something like that. See what I'm saying? Creating a reward system, showing them that they have the power to control their behavior. And that's what we're teaching them with this whole system, is we're putting the choices in their hands. They are not powerless. Even though they're not born knowing how to control their emotions, we can teach them how. And there are consequences for choosing not to, for not controlling your behavior. And that's really what it boils down to, is that they are not controlling their behavior, and that is unacceptable. Because as an adult, we have to control our behavior. The sooner we teach them that, the better off they're going to be. Yes, a child with autism needs firmer boundaries. Actually, Brisa, that's a really, really great question. They need firmer boundaries. They need more accountability. They need more warnings when it's time to transition between activities. They might need a couple of warnings before their consequences kick in rather than less. But I have seen this system work time and time and time and time again with special needs kids. And it's much more important to do it. I mean, it's not much more. It's equally important because they're all just kids, right? Their autism creates a boundary, creates a challenge for them, but it doesn't define them. It doesn't mean that they're not capable of controlling their behavior. They absolutely are. 100%. But we have to work within what they're capable of. So with special needs, you would probably need to baby step into the system a little bit more, right? But push them. Push them. Give them the respect. Give them the accountability. Give them the confidence in knowing that you trust that they're capable of being the best versions of themselves. And that's what this entire system is about. It's about enabling them and empowering them to be the best version of themselves when they're at an age or in a state of emotion that they don't know how to do it themselves. We're basically just kind of holding their hands and teaching them how to behave in an appropriate and respectful manner. I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that I didn't cover with this. So again, as you have questions or as you try out this system, definitely post in the comments, you know, any challenges that you have, post it so that I can help you along. I truly believe that we hold so much power when it comes to enabling our kids to be the best adults they can be, to be the most effective and the most efficient. And the most important thing is consistency is key. Consequences must kick in every single time. Now, every single time is not going to be easy, and you're not perfect, so you might realize that you've missed a couple. But don't miss it on purpose. If you see a behavior being broken, the consequence comes in. No matter what the time is, no matter how late you're going to be, no matter how late the kid is going to be for school, the consequence comes in. If you need to build in some time at the front end, if you need to get up a little bit earlier to make sure that you have time for time out before your day, you might have to do that. If you need to say to a child, this only works over the age of 8 or 9, by the way, but if you say, okay, we don't have time for timeout right now, but we're going to do it after, as soon as we get back home from school, then you're going to have to do that. But it only works as long as the child is older and can actually wrap their head around it. Before the age of 7 or 8, the consequences need to be immediate, and so does the reward if you have a reward system in place. Okie dokie. It has been wonderful sharing this information with you guys. I really hope it helps you. Let me know if it helps, if you have challenges. I'm here. That's what I'm here for, to help you guys have a more peaceful life and break through those barriers in your mind and in your life. Have an amazing day. Have an amazing week. Hi, Erica. Make sure to go back and watch the video. And I'll catch you guys soon. Bye.